Hello everyone and welcome to this interview. Today we have an amazing person, Luke Stokes, a veteran in blockchain space, tweeting about Bitcoin and blockchain since 2013, top 20 Steem witnesses, highly influential Steemit writer, and recently the part of the launch team of EOS DAC. I'm honestly thrilled about everything that we're going to speak about. Luke, I've been following you for like a year since I joined Steemit. I know you have a huge influence there. So thank you so much for accepting this interview, and let's get into this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was sad that we didn't get to actually do it in Puerto Rico when I was out there, but thank you for following up. I'm glad we could still do it.
Yes, yes. So we met with Luke on one of the crypto mixers in Puerto Rico, and decided just to started to talk about everything Steem related and EOS related, and this interview is the product of our discussion. So Luke, why don't we start with you giving your little story about going into crypto space, your journey, and then we brain tree the topics from there.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a programmer. I've been programming. I built my first website since like 1996. I've always been involved in technology. I majored in computer science at UPenn, and it was around end of 2012, early 2013, I really started. I'd heard about that fake internet money in like 2011, didn't really pay attention to it. And then 2013, I started diving in a little bit deeper. And I think it was actually like once I saw a tweet from like Anonymous or something, and they had that big squiggly line of characters. I'm like, wait, that's a Bitcoin address. I know what that is on their Twitter profile. And I was like, man, these are not stupid people, these anonymous guys. I should look into this a little more. And I bought my first Bitcoin in January of 2013. I spent $50 and I got 2.5 Bitcoin. And that was like the start of my story. I was buying all through 2013. When it ramped up to $1,200 at the beginning of 2014, end of 2013, I didn't sell. I saw it crash all the way down to like $250. And at one point, I think I sold some, and then I bought them right back because I'm like, I don't want fiat. This is the future. This is amazing. And so that was interesting watching that all happen. Ended up starting a meetup here in Nashville, Tennessee. It was one of the first meetups there. We actually, my company that I was working with, that I co-founded, called FoxyCart, is an e-commerce shopping cart company. So I was involved in the payment space, and we'd integrated with BitPay pretty early on as one of the first shopping carts that accepted Bitcoin. And I was writing about this recently, and I just found out that the Bitcoin wiki has an entry for FoxyCart, which I thought was great. Wow. We were one of the first advertisers on Let's Talk Bitcoin, even one of their first shows ever. So yeah, I've been involved in the space for a little bit. It's been kind of a side thing, but more recently this year in 2018, I've been really passionate about making it more my full-time thing.
Interesting. So you're big on Steemit. How did you get involved with Steemit? And tell us about this side of the story. I see you being very passionate about Steem right now and EOS recently, so I want to learn more about that angle.
Yes, being involved in the cryptocurrency space and kind of getting introduced to principles of voluntarism and how we can use this technology for the first time in ever, we can actually have networks be more efficient than hierarchies. Throughout most of human history, it's like, you need some strong rulers telling everybody what to do, and that hasn't worked out super well for us. So like, I'm really passionately excited about decentralization and this idea that the right technology through networks can really enable incredible things. And so I was watching the Bitcoin space year after year, kind of waiting for this to become more normal. It's like, I always felt like it was like the internet in 1992, or, there's very few people using it. It's very complicated. No one's going to sit there and type out SMTP commands manually if they want to send email. They're just going to go to Gmail or whatever, and it's easy. And Bitcoin was not easy for a long time. There was no, what I was looking for was the killer app for mass adoption of cryptocurrency. Yeah. And when I found Steemit, it was actually two friends of mine, Sean King and Bill Butler, both almost at the same time, said, hey, you got to get on this. This is what you've been looking for. And that was in June of 2016. So I created my account. I think I was camping at the time, and I was like, oh, man, this is awesome. I created the account, came back from that, posted my my first post. I think it was on July 4th or something, just to see what it was about. And then I was hooked. I was like, this is it. This is going to introduce people to cryptocurrency in a way that they can understand. And so Steemit is basically a social media platform that pays authors, curators, and content creators for their contribution. So unlike other social media platforms, which they take all your information, they sell it for billions of dollars to advertisers, this, through the same mechanism that Bitcoin has, where new currency is being created all the time, It is a very efficient algorithm through delegated proof of stake, so they don't have to pay the block producers a whole lot of money to incentivize them. So that extra amount is paid out to individuals who are providing all the value on the blockchain. So it's a super exciting opportunity for just everyday people to understand what cryptocurrency is, what a blockchain is, in a practical way they can actually like use on a daily basis.
So Steemit, and many people, like you just mentioned, and that's correct, it's the easy way to get into blockchain. It's the easy way to start to interact there without even learning. But if people go to their wallets, they're immediately confused with the amount of information there is in the wallets. There is Steem, there is Steem Dollar, there is Steem Power. How about you introduce us a little bit to what they mean and how can a regular user just quickly navigate through it and without being super confused about what's going on?
Yes, and what's funny, I've been writing about this and thinking about this. There's this aspect of understanding cryptocurrency that I've been starting to think about in terms of experiential knowledge. It's kind of like the first time you drive a car and you're a freaked out teenager, you are freaking out and it's the craziest, most, intense thing you've ever done, and your heart's racing and you're nervous and everything. Now, like you don't even pay attention. You're just like, I'm just driving. What's the big deal? And I think it's very, very similar. Like figuring out how to drive a car, like you don't know about all the complexities of the internal combustion engine and all that stuff. You just know, pedal, steering wheel, I can figure this out. And using cryptocurrency, especially on Steem and Steemit, is somewhat similar. They're not long, crazy hashes. It's just a username. So that's a little bit easier. But there are multiple currencies involved, and they can be a little confusing at first. I do think that once you kind of get your feet wet and get a little familiar with it, you can pick it up pretty quickly. So I'll go through it a little bit. The main cryptocurrency of the Steem blockchain is Steem. That's S-T-E-E-M. And that is a fantastic cryptocurrency. 3-second confirmation time, 0 transaction fees. It's got account recovery. It's got all these beautiful features to it. It's amazing. And so the Steem cryptocurrency is what powers everything. The blockchain basically keeps track of how much Steem there is, what the price of Steem is. That's something that we, as a witness, as a block producer, something that we do. We provide a price feed to the blockchain, so the code is actually knowing, oh, here's what the price of Steem is. From that information, it figures out the correct amount of certificates of debt is a way to think about the blockchain, the Steem blockchain dollar. That's the SBD part. When people go to a post and they see a dollar sign next to it and say, oh, that post is worth $5 or 50 cents or $10 or even more, where that comes from is that connection to the price of Steem in Steem blockchain dollars. Now, so if you read the white paper, it's supposed to be pegged to $1 US. That's the ideal. There's actually a floor to it. If it goes below that, you can take your Steem blockchain dollars through a smart contract and convert them to $1 of Steem. So it really kind of isn't going to go beneath the dollar very much. Unfortunately, currently, and hopefully we'll fix this in the future, there's no peg for it to go above that. So sometimes the Steem blockchain dollars are worth $2 or $5 or even $10. So it can be a little confusing when it shows that number and says, hey, this is what the post is worth. Well, it might actually be worth more. The idea being is that people are used to dollars. They're used to stable currencies. So introducing the Steem blockchain dollar to the ecosystem is important because that's something people can connect to. If the price of Steem goes up and down, ideally that Steem blockchain dollar is pretty stable. So that's when you put a post out there and it gets paid out 7 days later, half of your rewards are in Steem blockchain dollars. The other half are in Steem Power. So now we get to the third currency. Steem Power is the same thing as Steem. It's a one-to-one conversion between Steem and Steem Power as far as they're basically the same thing. But it's locked into a smart contract. And this is where things get a little confusing. When I say smart contract, I just mean it's an agreement running on this blockchain, which is this shared database everybody agrees to. And this agreement is a piece of code. It's software that you can basically send your Steem to the blockchain and you can put it into Steem Power on a 1-to-1 ratio. And behind the scenes, there's things called vests and other stuff I won't get into. But essentially, that enables how much voting power you have on the system. So there's this rewards pool of new currency that's being created all the time, like we talked about earlier. And the way the blockchain determines who gets to get some of this is the stake-weighted vote of all the Steem Power holders. So when you hold Steem Power and you vote on a post, depending on how much you hold, the amount of your vote, the value of it in terms of Steem blockchain dollars is going to show up as more. So it also determines who becomes a block producer. So for myself, I'm a witness on the blockchain. The top 20 witnesses, plus another one that gets rotated in every 63 seconds from the backups, they get to determine economic policy. They reviewed software code changes. They are the ones that are essentially securing the blockchain. And they are the ones providing the price feed we talked about. So when you hold Steem power, you get to actually vote for who a witness is. So that's a whole lot of stuff there. And of course, when you first come to the wallet, it's like, whoa, what is all this? And you're not going to get all that from the beginning. The main thing to remember is Steem is the main currency that runs everything. Steem blockchain dollars is supposed to be pegged to $1, might be more than that. Got to check CoinMarketCap to know. And Steem power is something you power up in a smart contract to have voting influence on the platform. That is a mouthful, I understand. Hopefully that wasn't too much.
That was a pitch. That was like a pitch, and I'm super happy that you were so clean and clear about like pointing out the entire picture. But I would love to like digest and vivisect some parts of that picture right now. So one of the very important things that you mentioned that I would love to discuss more is the stable coin. Right now, we have Tether, which is a bit doubtful about like what's going on with Tether, and lots of people have their doubts about it. And I know you wrote about this, and I'm also like one of the believers in stable coins, and I think that the market needs stable coins. So you actually just like dropped a bomb there saying that like if you actually read through white paper, you can understand that Steem blockchain dollar is supposed to be stable dollar, and there is a consortium of witnesses that are discussing this opportunity. So could you talk a little bit more about the potential of Steem dollar becoming a stable coin? Because this is massive.
Yes. Oh, I mean, when you look at how many billions and millions and billions of dollars are involved in stable coins like Tether and others, where there's just not much trust. You kind of have to just trust that they're doing what they say they're doing. And once you get to the fiat world, things get that's not on the blockchain anymore, and you just kind of have to hope that they're not lying to you. And there's a lot of interesting examples. Dan Larimer, who created Steem, also built BitShares, and on BitShares there's something called a BitUSD, and it's a similar kind of smart contract system where you can create BitUSD using your existing BitShares as collateral. The Steem blockchain dollar takes some of those ideas, but it's a little bit different. So there's like I said earlier, there's this method to make sure it doesn't go below $1. What we're talking about as far as the witnesses is, what if we had a reverse conversion? What if you could convert Steem into Steem blockchain dollars whenever the price of Steem was too high, and essentially create, or the price of Steem blockchain dollars were too high beyond the $1 peg, meaning it's no longer a stable currency, in order to increase the amount of SBD on the market to hopefully, be a supply and demand drive down the price. Now, I too am a huge fan of the value of stable currency. Instead of when the markets are going crazy, instead of people leaving cryptocurrency completely and going back to fiat currency, which we all know is manipulated and controlled by central banks and nation-state governments, it would be so much better in my mind to stay within a cryptographically provably secure system that can't be confiscated, that can't be can't be taken from you. And so and especially when you look at places like Venezuela, places like, wherever currencies are being destroyed, where governments are coming in and telling people, you have to use our store of value or else, they are desperate for something like this. And I do not want those people who are barely surviving on, $4 a month or whatever it might be, to be speculating in cryptocurrency. That's not appropriate. But I would love to provide for them a stable coin that they can invest in and know that it at least is going to be as stable as the US dollar. So we are working on that. It's a priority to me for sure, but it's also one of those things that, like, when you come in and be like, hey, my post is worth 3 or 4 times what it would be normally, I like that. So why would I want to fix it? It's kind of like, some people like it being broken. And so that's what we're kind of dealing with. And also too, if we, let's say, I don't know what the price is today, I haven't checked it, but let's say it's like $2 or something, or $3. If we start implementing something that drives that price down, well, that obviously directly hurts those who are holding that and speculating on that investment right now. So we have to be extremely careful how we go about this. And one of the proposals is essentially, we need to fix it, but let's wait and fix it once the price comes back down. Yeah. And that's kind of a question of, will that ever even happen? We don't know.
Wow. All right. That's interesting. That's definitely interesting. And what we covered in this answer and previous answer was this politics involved. And this is the question that I'm really interested right now, writing a book about world going from Web 2 to Web 3, and politics seems to be a huge, huge question that not too many people see. Like, a lot of people would be talking about the price volatility and day trading, and not enough people look into actual value of politics being built on top of blockchain right now, and the distribution of power that currently happens, that many people through airdrops and other forms of public activity could participate in by voting on Steemit, on EOS. There's lots of political aspects that are not properly covered, and maybe even they're not covered. So let's talk about politics. I know that there is DPOS, delegated proof of stake. I know there is proof of work, proof of stake, and those are all political forms of influence in the blockchain, and blockchain seems to be the basis of Web3. So let's get into your understanding and commentary about those political forces that are in place, and maybe you can mention something you do for EOS DAC right now. And
yeah, I'd love to talk about that as well. The way I love to think about these kind of things is on the very base level for human psychology. We're driven by intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. You know, we work 8 hours a day away from our family to essentially get pieces of paper with dead people on them that we call money, and we all collectively believe have value, but we work to get tokens of value. That's really essentially what we're doing, because we need those to survive, and we want those as mechanisms to interact voluntarily with others. And so it's funny, the word politics to me has so much connotation that's so negative, and I like to talk about governance, because essentially that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build governance in a system that is provably fair, or provably follows the protocols that we previously agreed to in a contractual basis, without threats of violence. Like, that's ultimately what I so much dislike about nation-state governments, is they use a monopoly on violence to control the narrative and to control their perspective on things. And I think that we can do better. You know, I think that worked very well for a very long time. But the idea that a blockchain is globally recognized nonviolent consensus, and that's a beautiful, amazing tool for us. And once we have that tool, we can then actually look into and say, okay, now we have this system. Well, how do we secure it? How do we make sure nobody's corrupting the blockchain? And that's where the tokens come in. So sometimes people say, oh, you know, I love the blockchain technology, but I'm not into cryptocurrency. Whenever I hear that, I often think, well, they fundamentally don't understand how the system works. The value of the cryptocurrency is what secures the blockchain. The block producers, the miners, or the block producers like witnesses on Steem or EOS or BitShares through delegated proof of stake, they are rewarded for their securing of the network via the valuable token. So the token has to be valued. If it's not, you get 51% attacks, you get miners that come in, you get forks, things that can happen because people are not incentivized to secure the chain. So all these discussions, I think, are really interesting, because they're mainly tech focused, from like the actual, like, what's the technology involved to make this actually function, but they also deal with a lot of game theory and a lot of kind of human psychology and motivational psychology and governance of, like, how do we prevent bad actors from doing bad things, and also how do we kind of incentivize good actors for continuing to provide valuable services. And you know, like I said, I've been involved in Bitcoin for a long time. Proof of work was the only game in town, and when Dan Larimer came out with delegated proof of stake, there's aspects to it that I really like. Proof of stake itself can kind of create this oligarchy where it's just, you know, whoever has tokens gets more tokens, and that can be a problem. And delegated proof of stake still has some of those concerns as well. We still have, like you were talking about, if we don't have a good distribution, we can have some problems there even. But I like the idea that if you get enough people together, they can say, you know what, this block producer or this witness, we're not going to support them. We want to put this other person in place. And we didn't see that with the block size debate, for example, with Bitcoin. It was just, there was so much drama for years and years. And people back in 2014, 2015 were like, 2017, this thing's going to break. It's totally going to break. We need to fix it. And there was just so much drama between the miners, the block producers. There was no mechanism for them to do what the users wanted. They're like, high fees? Awesome. We get paid more. You know, and the users are like, hey, it's broken now. It doesn't work like it used to. So that was a great example for me to recognize we need something better. And I feel like delegated proof of stake is a mechanism where there is decentralization. We have 20 different independent block producers plus 100 plus backups. And if there's a problem, immediately you can remove them. The community can come together and say, this person is not acting in our own best interest as a community. We're going to remove them. And I haven't seen anything else that allows for that level of governance that is distributed to a large community. And if there is an attack, if a number of block producers get co-opted by governments or anything like that, again, the community together can come in and act quickly. And I've already seen that happen in the, almost a year now that I've been a block producer. It's been very cool to see these governance systems actually function and provide value to people. I think it's an exciting time to be alive, because we can essentially make most monopoly services that are backed by threats of violence just not needed anymore. We can do smart contracts.
Interesting. So this DPOS, delegated proof of stake form of governance, it relies on something called decentralized autonomous community, as I understand, which is Dan's response to Vitalik's DAOs, centralized autonomous organization. So could you comment a little bit on DACs more, and why do you like them more than DAOs? And
what's funny is I was actually looking at this just recently. Dan actually coined the DAC term, and then Vitalik came with the DAO to kind of clarify the corporation can have some legal concerns. So let's just call it organization. But distributed autonomous corporations or organizations, or what I'm involved in currently called EOS DAC, it's actually an distributed autonomous community. These are essentially entities that live regardless of which humans are involved. They live on the internet, on the blockchain. They are running. There are a series of protocols that you set up, and you say, hey, if this happens, then this. If that happens, then this. And it doesn't matter which individuals are actually engaging with the system. So, for example, you could call the Steem blockchain a form of a DAC because they're running on the blockchain. And if you post and people upvote it, you get paid. And there's no human being that has to be involved in that process. It's fully autonomous. And the current block producers that's where there's always a connection between the autonomous blockchain and the human being individual. And that's where in Steem you have proof of brain, where people are voting on content. You have the block producers who are actually setting up the servers and maintaining them and running them. That's where kind of the digital world meets the real world. And that's always going to be needed. But the idea being, how do we get as close to this autonomous system as we can without like full-blown AI? And that's another version. Like you can have full-blown AI, and in a sense, distributed autonomous communities are a version of that. So just last week, actually, I'm really excited. I decided to join EOS DAC. And EOS DAC is an organization that is building one of the first, they're basically applying to be a block producer on the EOS blockchain, which launches in June. And they're going to have 21 block producers that are securing the network, just like on the Steem blockchain, and they will be rewarded financially for doing so. And this is a group of people that got together and said, hey, we want to build tools for DACs on the EOS blockchain. And we're also going to build the tools for ourselves because we are going to be a DAC. So it's a beautiful combination. In software, they talk about eating your own dog food. You use the tools that you're actually building. So I love this about EOS DAC. We as a community are going to be building tools that we ourselves use and that we make available to the entire EOS community. And then on top of that, we are doing an airdrop of a token, an EOS DAC token, to all EOS holders. I think the EOS distribution of currency is a really great wide distribution because of the year-long ICO. And so a lot of the network effect of a currency, and especially a token for voting, you want to have wide distribution. That's what's going to give it a lot of value. So we've decided to actually, starting April 15th, which that may be by the time this comes out, but the idea being every EOS holder at that snapshot point is going to get an EOS DAC token, and that's similar to like a membership invitation. They can then choose to join the EOS DAC organization, and then with their holdings, they get to actually play a role in that governance. They get to, the launch team is going to launch it, myself included, and then we're all going to have to campaign to get voted in. Hopefully we will be. And then the EOS DAC token holders will vote us in, and we get to make decisions according to the Constitution that'll be published and according to all the protocols that are in place, both the EOS Constitution and the EOS DAC Constitution. Part of this, too, we haven't even gotten into yet, is the EOS blockchain in particular. It's really exciting that they are taking constitutional concepts like Ricardian contracts and actually putting them into the code. So there'll be human-readable contracts with like variables where things get plugged in by the blockchain that we are going to be able to agree to prior to implementation. And so really excited about that opportunity for more decentralization, for actually demonstrating to people how we can do governance and distributed autonomous organizations without threats of violence, without the centralized need for some ruler to tell everybody what to do. There's going to be consensus. There's going to be mechanisms for arbitration and conflict resolution and all that. So I'm very, very excited about it because I do think this is the future. I think every company or every nonprofit, every organization in the future is going to see the value in this as far as their member engagement and their buy-in and everything. And so we're in an exciting place to be able to build tools for the people that are going to be building the future. And I'm just super excited about that. And also, the block producers on EOS are going to make a significant amount of funds, possibly more so than they need directly for their server costs and their, paying their employees and everything. So part of what we're kind of exploring is how those funds will be used. And that's, again, part of what the EOS DAC community will decide, including potentially, distribution to token holders, whatever that ends up looking like. What's exciting is the membership themselves are going to decide.
That's very interesting. You covered lots of topics there, and I would love to follow up with questions on some of them. First of all, the launch of EOS blockchain is scheduled in June 2018. However, Block 1 is not going to be launching it. It's fully up to community. So I would love you to comment on that. And the second thing, if you can comment in like one answer, although they're different, is that EOS is another baby of Dan Larimer. It's like a third product, and this time he's doing not something specific, but he's doing with the team. They're doing a tool to build things like Steemit. So the second question would be there, before I forget, EOS can potentially be used to create something bigger than Steemit. So you are both on Steem and Steemit, and you're on EOS. So there would be a conflict of interest for you there. So let's first answer the one about the EOS and launch, and then we get into this very interesting topic. Second one.
The first part is exciting because, and there are a number of reasons for that. I think there are legal reasons. They're not the one launching it, so they're not going to be responsible for it as an organization. And this is what, again, the beauty of distributed autonomous corporations. They currently have a gray area in legal standing. There's no legal precedent for how nation states can monitor, control, anything like that, because they live outside of nation state borders. And to me, I just find that super fascinating and exciting. I love that because it means they don't get to, again, use their threats of violence to stop it. They can't. It's fully decentralized. So the community is going to come together and say, what's that?
It's Reddit where people have power.
Yes, it's Reddit where people have power. Exactly. And the idea that the community is going to come together, and we're all going to, pick a launch team that launches it, and then there's going to be, people, again, the EOS token holders, just like EOS DAC, we're kind of following the same model. The EOS token holders will then vote in block producers who they feel are going to provide the most value for the network. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And as you said, Dan Larimer, he first did proto shares and then BitShares 1.0, and then Graphene came out, which is an amazing technology, so he did BitShares 2.0, basically rewrote everything. Then he built Steem, and now he's building EOS. And EOS, the way I like to think about it, is kind of like the Amazon Web Services for blockchain technology. It's what every corporation and enterprise is going to go to when they realize they need to be on the blockchain. Just like every company realized, oh, we need to be on the internet. Same kind of thing. They're going to move to the blockchain certain services that provide financial benefits to them for doing so. And EOS is going to be the most performant, the most distributed, the most incredible blockchain out there. And so my understanding is Dan is building this because it's going to be the thing that he wants in order to build everything else he wants to do for securing life, liberty, and property. And so that does include potentially rebuilding some of the tools he built before, such as BitShares, such as, and a lot of people, like you even mentioned, that there's a potential conflict of interest. I love saying no to that. I love actually saying, no, this is one of the most amazing opportunities for us to demonstrate as a community how open source technology works and how everybody benefits from every innovation. Every single time something in this space happens, every other blockchain, every other community, every other system, even if they're following the same traditional market verticals, such as social media or such as decentralized exchanges, whether that's Steem or BitShares, we all benefit from everyone else's success. Everyone else's victory becomes everybody's victory. And this is one of the most powerful realities of open source technology that I'm really passionate about. And I really want to get away from a primitive tribalism mentality of like, I'm just going to, support my own community because that's the token I hold the most of, and I want to see that token do well. I think if we take a different perspective and say, hey, how can we provide the most value? How can we create the world that we all want to live in? That's the goal, is we want to create a world that selfishly I want to help everyone, because that creates the world I want to live in. And so that idea, I think, is a beautiful one. And I want to promote that more in terms of every bit of value that I learn from serving EOS DAC and their launch team, every bit of value that I learn creating distributed autonomous corporation tools and community tools, I can bring that value back to Steem. And everything that I've learned, every project I've been involved in always benefits every other project. And so I've learned things from the smart cash community. I've learned things from my own work building an e-commerce platform for more than 10 years. And so I think that by being involved in EOS, it actually makes me a better witness on the Steem blockchain because I actually have more experience on what's going on in other communities. And when I see something, maybe even early on, hey, here's something they're doing, we definitely need to think about implementing something like that, and vice versa. And I've already, in the discussions on EOS governance, I've been able to bring some experience to the table and say, well, here's what it actually does in practice. You know, we're talking about this stuff in theory, but having been a block producer, I can actually tell them, well, here's what really goes on, like you mentioned, in the politics of, you know, how often do people, you know, I've been there for almost a year and I've never had not one person approach me for vote buying, either because they know I'd totally expose them to the entire community as a bad actor, or they recognize I would just, you know, I'm not the type of person that would do that. But those are the kind of things, like vote buying is extremely dangerous to a delegated proof of stake system. If you incentivize that, it all goes downhill. And yet, you know, it hasn't happened a whole lot, which is actually pretty encouraging. People recognize, at least not to me. And so, yeah, I think all of these projects have the potential to be conflicts, and then we've already seen the conflicts from, you know, Dan and Ned as far as their different falling outs and things that they've had. And I don't know all the details to that, but I do know that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be a conflict. If EOS starts building a better tool for social media, decentralized social media that rewards authors and curators, then I feel that that's just going to light a fire under everyone involved in Steem to be that much better and to improve and innovate that much quicker. And this is how the systems work. You know, even when Facebook comes out or Twitter comes out or, you know, these other systems, we still use the other ones. The only reason I still don't use MySpace is I lost my password. But if I still had it, I'd probably still use it, you know?
There are some people that want to take conference room. Let me jump into another room so hold on for a second. All right, we back. I needed to switch the room because I sat too much in the conference room and the other guys needed to take the space. So computer is on my laps right now and Luke is still there. Thank you for waiting, Luke. So let's continue. So yeah, that's very interesting. Now, before we get into the very interesting question I want to cover, which is smart media tokens, which is a very serious project by Steemit, right? I want your opinion on this declaration of EOS that you mentioned already, and yeah, where can we read it? Is it in white paper? Like, where is the declaration is going to be?
When you say that declaration of EOS, what do you mean in particular?
Well, as I understood, the guys are going to have like a constitution, like a set of rules.
Ah, yes. That's the EOS constitution is still being developed. So the Telegram channel for EOS governance is where all that's getting worked out. And there are, all kinds of incredible conversations, and a lot of the experience from different things that happened on Steem and that is happening on Steem are contributing to that. A lot of ways that people want to improve society and recognize, you know, how we're going to have built-in arbitration as an example. They're actually part of the system where if somebody says, hey, this person defrauded me, you know, he stole my tokens, or hey, this person was doing vote buying, which is against the Constitution, you know, I'm going to call them out, and they can actually, I mean, in a very extreme case, and these are things that are being discussed, potentially locking up those funds. You know, if the community agrees, hey, we think something bad happened here, and actually being able to control those funds according to a pre-agreed constitutional system with arbitration and ways that you can actually appeal and all that. So it's pretty amazing, but it's all early in development. If people are passionate about this kind of stuff, it's being discussed right now, and there's some great conversations going on.
So when is it going to be released? Is it going to be released before June launch of EOS or after?
As far as I know, the initial block will include the initial constitution. So that launches in June 1st. And it does have mechanisms for it to be able to update itself, you know, in that terms of, you know, doing kind of, you know, amendments and stuff like that to the constitution. But as far as I know, yeah, the basic constitution is going to be part of the initial launch.
Okay. Now, going back to Steem and Steemit, I know we jumped the topics. It's all interconnected. You're doing so many things, so I'm jumping topics. So going back to Steemit, two things. One thing is Steemit platform has a lot of problems right now. The registration takes a lot of time. The interface is still, it's better, but it's still lagging. There is no app, so it's mobile, but there is no app for that. And when I suggest Steemit to my friends, I always feel like I have to say sorry for lots of these things that they're gonna like find out pretty soon. So I tell them how amazing it is, but still like sorry for this and that, right? So for the people who are advocating for Steemit, it's a bit difficult. And at the same time, we see them pursuing already a new project called Smart Media Tokens. So as a Steem witness, I feel like you have lots of in-depth knowledge about the problems of Steemit. What is that currently the team of Steemit is focusing on, if not on those things that I pointed out that community kind of like speaks about all the time? And what is the deal with Smart Media Tokens?
Yeah, one thing to start, I think, is really important, is to recognize that, and I did a whole post on this, it's one of the posts I'm most proud of, is that recognizing that Steem is far more valuable than Steemit. And Steem is the cryptocurrency in the blockchain. Steemit is just kind of an example. It's a reference implementation of what anybody can do on the Steem blockchain. It's not the only one. We have busy.org as an example. We have other projects as well that connect into the blockchain and provide an interface for it. Now, Steemit.com is obviously the flagship. It's what, the Steemit company developed themselves. And it is open source, so people can, change it, fork it, tweak it, all that stuff. And it does have problems, but I also recognize that, and I got to talk to a lot of the team when I was out at Steamfest 2 in Lisbon. They're thinking about the millions and millions of users that are coming. They're not as concerned about the hundreds of thousands we have now. Now, they are obviously concerned, but they're prioritizing long-term scalability and performance. And so their app base is an example of a big project that they're almost ready. There are a bunch of witnesses that are already running it on test servers. This idea that we have to modularize the blockchain so that an exchange, for example, only cares about the transactions, the monetary transactions. They don't care about who voted on what content and what post. That's completely irrelevant to them. So the idea being is we modularize the blockchain. There can be upgrades and improvements to certain pieces that might help the performance of the social media side of it that won't impact an exchange and have them to, resync their entire blockchain, take down their wallet, all that kind of stuff. So those type of improvements are really important, but they're not like exciting and sexy. People don't realize what's going on. And so what they've been encouraging people to do is go to their GitHub and actually look through. And I've done a post on this. I need to do more posts on this. Just highlight the activity that is going on. Roadscape and others are really active on improving Steemit.com as well, but they're doing that in a way that involves an entirely other project called HiveMind. And what we hear in the community, people talking about communities. And it's just a different way that the content will be organized, different way that the community will be organized into individual communities. And it's again, a very large project. So these things are happening, but when a whole new thing is being worked on and the existing one's just sitting there with all its problems, people are like, hey, what's going on? And it can be frustrating. Same thing with onboarding. There is a new onboarding process that they're working on. The next hard fork talks about a different process for creating new accounts through mining. So that these are all things that are being worked on. But Steem, the company, Steemit, is very, very busy. And one of my concerns is actually burnout. So it's funny, a lot of people are like, it doesn't look like they're doing anything because I'm not seeing any changes. But those who actually go and look at what they're doing on the GitHub and realize the hours they're putting in are recognizing, holy moly, guys, don't work too hard because, and the reality is it is the most active blockchain on the planet.
Wow.
If you go to blocktivity.info, you take all the transactions for the last 24 hours of every other blockchain combined, and Steem is doing more transactions than all of them. So as much as we might get impatient and frustrated with the interface, what's really important is the actual blockchain technology. That's what's super valuable. That's what's going to be powering systems way into the future. So I always try to remind people that Steem is way more valuable than Steemit. Yes, Steemit has problems. Yes, we have to make those kind of assumptions, those apologies when we get people on board. And yes, it takes a while to get on board and all that. But the way I look at it again is just, it's the internet early days. Maybe we're 1996 now, instead of 93, but we're still early on. There's still going to be some complicated things. We're not at the streaming video of the internet usage yet. We're not at that stage yet. But it's funny, we already have DTube and DLive and like DSound, and we already have these amazing, DMania for memes and stuff. So we already have these amazing tools that are already being built on the blockchain, even with all of its challenges. So I'm still passionately excited about it, and will continue to be. And I think it's just a matter of educating people on, well, here's where we are and here's where we're going. So yeah, it's got some bumps and bruises, but you're also, man, you're getting involved super early. And this is before, as you mentioned, smart media tokens are launched. So if you want, we could dive into that a little bit. A smart media token is another big project that, as far as I understand, is not being fully focused on and actively developed until these major important foundational pieces are. Now, Steemit is growing the team, so there are people working on different things at the same time. But what a smart media token is essentially going to be is a way for any company anywhere that creates content, media content, to engage their audience in a way where they can have an engaged community that gets rewarded for their content, that is disincentivized trolls, that enables them to have a revenue model as a company that's outside of advertisement. So for example, if we were to take like the New York Times or something like that, and they were to create their own smart media token, and this would be a token that is on the Steem blockchain, just like Ethereum ERC20 tokens are on Ethereum. These tokens, they could actually do an ICO if they wanted to. They could have a built-in market maker bot, which could be use some of the funds from the ICO to give that token some initial value within the marketplace. And they could also essentially launch their own interfaces that would have their own community with their own token and their own reward system. And then on top of that, there's a concept of an oracle that can actually, and that would be a human being paid by the blockchain and voted into that position, who would ensure that that reward pool is being followed according to the community guidelines of that smart media token. So if they were to be like, hey, here's our guidelines, if you do any of these things, you don't get to participate in the rewards pool. It doesn't matter how much one person buys up a whole bunch of the token and wants to be some influential whale. If they're not following the community guidelines, then they don't get to participate. So certain features like that I'm very excited about. And it gives us an opportunity to explore and experiment with these different tokens. So things that one community might find very useful within their SMT, their smart media token, we may end up porting that information all the way back up to the Steem token if it's going to benefit anybody and everybody. So it's a very very exciting time. They have committed to it being launched at some point in 2018. I'm really hopeful that that's going to happen. I'm really passionately excited about what it's going to do. I think it's going to make the entire Steem ecosystem just explode, because tools that are built on Steem will now work for these other SMTs as well.
One question that popped up in my mind as you were speaking is people upvoting themselves. So this is like a big controversy discussion right now going on Steemit, and I know there's like a lot of passionate people giving lots of opinions. It's a big thing because you see whales upvoting themselves. Some of them are more, more how would I say, doing it more writers than the others. Like they're doing it for good. Some of them are definitely abusing the system, and I see like communities organized, which is beautiful. Communities organized together to hunt the bad actors, and this is beautiful. But like, what do you think about people upvoting themselves, and whether it should be the thing or it should be something that should be erased from Steem? What's your position on that?
I did a post a while back, and it was one of the most active, over 100 comments about, is self-voting scammy behavior, or is it rational self-interest as far as what an investor should do?
Yeah.
And I probably have a not popular opinion, but my opinion is essentially self-voting is noise. That's kind of the opinion I've landed to personally myself, because the entire point in the white paper talks about proof of brain. This is individuals who go out there and say, hey, I'm taking my stake-weighted vote, and I'm basically signaling to the network, this content is valuable, and I want everyone to know this is 100% upvote, this is a 20% upvote. This activity of curation of content is very valuable, and you get rewarded as a curator as well. But when I upvote my own content, it's like, well, yeah, of course I think my own content is valuable, or I wouldn't even bother posting it. So it doesn't add new signal. It's just noise. So I've made it a point personally, I don't upvote myself almost at all, even my root posts. And a lot of people, they'll just say, well, I upvote my root post, but I'll do it after the first, hour or two to make sure all the curation rewards go to other people. And I think that's a great process as well. But it's when it becomes obsessive, when we have certain accounts that are taking all the rewards pool, or a large portion of it, or even a high percentage of it, the community is like, hey, are you really providing so much value to all of us that you deserve that much of the rewards pool? And I think a big part of how we fix this is essentially just becoming more comfortable with a downvote. And unfortunately, in the Steemit interface, a downvote is a flag. On the blockchain, it's just a downvote. Upvote, downvote, exact same thing. But in the interface, it's a flag. And so people take it very personally. They get very upset if they get flagged. Like, you took my money. And it's like, well, no, it's very clearly potential rewards. It's not yours until 7 days later it gets paid out by the blockchain. It's definitely not yours. And that perception, those dollar signs next to the post really confuse people. And so it's a very emotional discussion. People get very upset about it. And I have very smart friends that I respect and appreciate who disagree with me and say, you know, you should be able to upvote yourself. You should upvote yourself, because if you don't, then some other blockchain will come along that better serves investors and provides value to them. And, you know, it's a good argument. I respect that argument. I also think that there are other options we can still explore. There might be other opportunities for investors to be rewarded without having to do something that the community doesn't like. So another thing I like to bring into this conversation is a reminder that all the money everyone's complaining about is only there because of investors. They provide all the value we see. And I've talked to people who have invested serious amounts of money. Myself, I've invested, you know, a number of Bitcoin when it was at the all-time high of like $4 in the very, you know, way back. And that investment is tanked since then because Bitcoin went way up and my Steem went way down. But I'm still here. I'm still passionately excited about it. But I want to recognize that the value we get, the value we're even arguing over, only comes from investors. So it's important to listen to them. If they have an argument for why they think self-voting is important, I mean, I think we should hear that and we should evaluate it. And we should say, yeah, you know, it's either that or they sell all their tokens and go somewhere else to a different stake-weighted or master coin or some other system that will reward them as investors. So it's a complicated discussion that we're still working on. We're still figuring out. I do agree that the best tools we have now is the community coming together, voicing what they feel passionate about, hopefully coming to some form of consensus, and then using the tools available, such as the downvote, to kind of enforce their consensus.
That's great, man. So far, the conversation, where it's going, I think it's beautiful. I hope you enjoy it. Like, so far, we've covered so much ground. I want to take us right now a little bit back in time to Puerto Rico and speak a little bit about your experience being here and your, like, the intersection of your experience that we just spoke about with your experience with Puerto Rico, and discuss what could be done for the island. What do you think is happening on the island? What was your connection with the island and different communities that are being formed here right now?
I absolutely love Puerto Rico. My wife, my 3 kids, and I, we stayed for 2 weeks. We actually had scheduled to go in November, but then Maria hit, and so we had to push that back until this past February, or March. I guess I get confused. It was just, yeah, it was March. We just had such an amazing time. Every day I'm in the water with my kids. I'm enjoying it. I grew up in Southern California, so I love being at the beach. I love the weather. I love everything about it. I love the people. And when I look at a situation where the financial system has been so destroyed, they've been so dominated by violent governments and corrupt crony governments and all these different things, it's just, my heart bleeds for what's going on, and yet the people are optimistic, and yet the people are happy. The people are looking to the future. Every conversation, every Uber driver I talked to, they were excited about blockchain technology. We talk about Bitcoin, and we talk about how you could do some amazing things in the future with this system. The passion, their willingness to try something new, it was so encouraging. And so I'm very seriously, my wife and I and my kids are very seriously considering moving permanently to Puerto Rico because we love it. And so we spent time with a realtor when we were out there. We are definitely exploring this because of, you know, obviously the tax incentives for Americans for Act 20 and 22 are very nice. But then on top of that, more importantly to me, is the idea that I don't have to support violent government with my taxation. And I get to be part of something that I've been dreaming about for more than 5 years. This idea that we can demonstrate for the world how to do on-chain blockchain governance without traditional nation-state government influence, which is just, you know, without laws that are essentially threats of violence. You know, we can do it with actual contracts, with actual smart contracts, things people get to agree to and opt into, instead of just, hey, you were born on this, you know, within these imaginary lines on a map, and therefore you are subject to all these rules and rulers. And so I'm really excited about that. I got an opportunity to visit where Brock Pierce has his building down there in Old San Juan. I got to go to a party there and connect with a lot of people. I got to talk to a number of people who are moving there, friends of mine who have already moved there. The excitement right now is just, you could just feel it in the air of people saying, hey, this is hope, this is an opportunity. And the people that I'm most excited about in the blockchain space, that I feel that are passionate about this, they're not doing this for the money. They already have their money. Money is no longer a concern. These are people you can't purchase with money. they're passionate about improving the world at this point in their life. And that's what I think they're going to be doing in Puerto Rico. That's my hope. The idea that they can demonstrate smart cities built on blockchain technology, communities that understand governance and have a coin that's be their own control, their own ability to control their own store of value. All of that is just super passionately exciting for me, and I hope to be a part of it if I can, even if it's from afar. But as I said, we're seriously considering being there because it's a beautiful, amazing place as well.
It's very interesting. Being on the island, I see a lot of parties at play, and I see definitely local nonprofit communities, for-profit communities, definitely like those crypto capitalists with big capital come in, but also Act 20 and 22 people that are also coming. And like the mix of everybody working together and some not working, we'll see where it goes. Like there will be like lots of pathways where what's happening right now could go. But one thing that I think is important for the island is the education. I do believe that education is a political act, and the fact that we have organizations on the island educating the locals is very important. Now, self-governance, this self-governance, that's the whole discussion that we just had about the DPOS self-governance, I think it's a huge opportunity for Puerto Rico, for all of those nonprofits to implement this governance model and to be more open about what they're doing. So what is your vision about, maybe you've seen some problems of Puerto Rico, what do you think Puerto Rico like could implement from blockchain? What practical things could the local people who are striving to change the economic vector of the entire sorry, the territory, right? It's not a country yet. Yeah. Like the entire vector, they could change it from manufacturer to completely into web and hopefully Web3. They can do this. But what are the practical things that you see they should be exploring, they should be educated about? Like, what's your opinion on that?
First of all, this is a technological movement, so learning to code is super important, and that's why I was really excited that I got to hang out with Cybercode Twins and Virtual Growth. There are people on the ground who are actually organizing meetups. At the meetup we met, they organized that meetup within days, which is just amazing. And they are running, Hacker House there in Puerto Rico and San Juan,
which I live
educating people and working with people in order to help them become better blockchain developers and contribute to that whole space. So first off is just, learning how to be a programmer and contribute value in that way. But absolutely, it's about education. And there are a lot of really cool educational opportunities, such as like Academy Token is going to create a situation to train blockchain developers. Because for every open position, every open developer available for an open position, you got 16 other positions that are not full. They're just desperate for developers. And so projects like that are going to help with that. One of the examples that I like to talk about is just the idea of the new economy is going to be completely different than what we've been. And if Puerto Rico leads in that, they'll be the front runners explaining to the whole world how it works. And it's the idea that you have customers who want, to do the least amount of work and the customers, they want the best price, right? The best product for the least price. You got the employees who want to do the least amount of work and get paid the most amount of money. And then you got the token holders, the shareholders, who just want to maximize profit and again, with the least amount of expenditure. And in the past, these are always in conflict with each other. But when we tokenize this system and we say, hey, if you're a token holder, you're an investor. You're also a customer because you're going to use that utility token to provide value to yourself. And you're also going to be an employee because you see a need as a customer using that product. You're like, oh, hey, I know how to do that. I can fix that. That's no problem. Let me go ahead and just take care of that real quick. And then you're doing that because it's going to increase the value of your tokens and it's going to give you a better experience as a customer. So I would love to see Puerto Rico really educate on that concept of how this new economy is going to function and how participants in these different systems can really demonstrate for everyone how it's going to work. And so one obvious example would be the power industry, the power system. There's been corruption after corruption after corruption where the money disappears and the work doesn't get done and everybody suffers. The idea, what if the entire power grid could be tokenized? What if every single citizen, every single person there has a share in the actual system and they're all engaged, they're all part owners, they all have an opportunity to contribute value and say, hey, I know that this needs to be fixed here and I see an opportunity over here. And then they use their tokens as utility to pay for their electricity as well. And then you have this idea that we could have a free market that's actually encouraging and supporting transparency and governance in a way that everyone agrees to. So you don't have these corrupt people taking all the money. And so then that could be fully decentralized too. It could branch off into investing in, like, you know, Tesla power walls and solar panels. And it would no longer be this vested interest to say, I need to protect my little kingdom, because it would be everyone wants the best price at the best, you know, value with the best return on investment too. So how amazing would it be if the actual energy grid became a profit center for every single Puerto Rican? You know, like, what if businesses start coming to Puerto Rico because their power system is so advanced because they've been investing money in it, and every single person on the island is actually an employee of the power grid, you know? And so just, there's so many amazing opportunities. You know, you could have wind and solar and decentralized power with batteries and things like that, where, you know, you could have opportunities where actually businesses are drawn to how well the system works in Puerto Rico, as opposed to it being the example everybody points to because it's so broken, because the centralized authorities, they were spending other people's money. So they didn't have the incentive that an owner like you and I would have if we were to try to build a system from scratch and make it better. So I think power is just one example. Education is another obvious example. Transportation, every Uber driver I talked to said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to not pay 25% to Uber and have a decentralized system where it was just you and me in the car, and you have a reputation on the blockchain and I have a reputation on the blockchain as a customer, and man, you get 100%, and this is a one-to-one peer-to-peer exchange of value. Like, that's just one of many, many examples where this is going to disrupt the entire world. I mean, I think blockchain technology is going to be more disruptive than the internet. I said this in a talk back in 2013, and I still believe it. I still believe it today. So it's a matter of just getting people up to speed with this new economy, helping them to know where they fit, where they can get involved, and then, you know, being an example for the world. And it's going to be a powerful draw. I think the whole world is going to see it and be like, what are they doing in Puerto Rico? Because holy moly, they are prospering, and we need some of that. And what a great story it would be too, going from bankruptcy to incredible prosperity via tokenization and tokenomics. I mean, it's exciting stuff.
It's interesting that you brought up this example with Uber driver, because I remember having the same conversation with my Uber driver about Uber going on peer-to-peer, and my Uber driver was like, yeah, Uber is doomed, like it's no longer going to be existing in 3 years. I'm like, where did he get that data? Like, why do we have this conversation here? Yep. It was very interesting. So I definitely like relate to your experience. I see lots of people being very welcoming and open-hearted about it. I just wish that they don't get hurt by people coming, because they're super nice people and they, you know, welcome everybody with open arms, and I feel responsible for helping them. Yes. And a big part of that is that they might be hurt because they might be some bad actors still on the island that would just, you know, come and profit from it. We both know how cheap the real estate here, and, you know, the fact that a lot of people can just jump on it and grab too much for themselves. That's a problem that I'm still discovering. And basically, the problem that I'm trying to help right now with the island is that I feel like it lives in the informational bubble. A lot of information that happens here on the island does not get to English-speaking, English-written publications. It stays at local news in Spanish. And I'm just amazed by the amount of information that doesn't leave the island, that doesn't inform the people about what's going on here. One of the things that I recently learned was that Acts 20 and 22, they were supposed to reach the current milestone of productivity by 2035. They reached it today. So the island is literally like booming with people coming. And nobody really talks about that. All you hear in the news is like how bad this, you know, crypto movement is in Puerto Rico, and at the same time, you know, you're covering like a very small amount of people, Brock and people around him, but like what about like the rest of the people that are here doing like those amazing things? You mentioned Cyberco Twins, you mentioned Virtual Growth. There's lots of influential people I meet every day doing this kind of things. So if you move to the island, that would be amazing if you could participate like informationally in yes. what's going on.
So my wife speaks Spanish. I took high school Spanish. I would absolutely make it one of my priorities to get fluent in Spanish along with my 3 kids, or 8, 6, and 4, because I completely appreciate and agree with what you're saying. And that is actually one of my concerns as well, and of the friends that I know that have moved there. They don't want to come in and be like, here we are, the gringos, whatever term we want to use, here are the mainlanders who are going to come solve all your problems because look at our money. That is not the right approach. And I really respect and appreciate that the number of people I've talked to are smart enough and at a consciousness level enough to recognize that will never work, and that we have to partner with the people on the ground who have access to all that news information that you're talking about. They understand what's going on. They understand what the real needs are, and therefore they're going to be our teachers. They're going to be teaching us as people like us come to the island to say, where's the greatest need? How can we serve you? And I think that is going to be the model of success. Yes, we have education. Yes, we have things that we can bring as far as cryptocurrency and these new models of governance. But ultimately, it's the people on the ground. I mean, I've heard terrible stories of people who, like, literally people who died. You know, old people or young people who died because they didn't have electricity. They didn't have clean water. I mean, after Maria, there's a lot of trouble, and you know, months and months and months before they get power turned on in schools and things like this. And I think these are the things that we need to hear and we need to know about, and we need to, I would definitely say, partner with the people that are already there and really respect the cultures, respect the experience, and really come in and say, okay, we're not here to, you know, destroy anything of value. We're here to bring value, and that's going to be a partnership. That's going to be a communication. And I too have been a little frustrated at some of the mainstream publications that have described the situation. I mean, I can't describe them other than hit pieces. It was like, you know, they would just talk about one thing and I'd be like, did they, you know, and I remember even replying, I think it was Andreas tweeted something and I replied and I was like, you know, that wasn't the story I heard, you know, like, and I was there, you know, so it's just recognizing those people that want to get a lot of attention, and they do so by pointing out the flaws, because everyone likes a bad story of, you know, people screwing up or, you know, but stepping back and looking at the whole picture to saying, like you said, using data and statistics, say what's on the whole happening, and then we can look at that, and if that's a positive, amazing story, you know, we got to push it out there. And unfortunately, that doesn't sell ads. And this is again why I'm so passionate about things like Steemit. Is it's not an ad-based system. You know, we can decide what posts we're going to upvote, and they can be feel-good stories about positive change. That it's like, yeah, that's, if you know, they say if it bleeds, it leads. As far as the traditional news systems, we don't have to follow that model. We can actually take the exact opposite and say, hey, what's the most amazing story of Puerto Ricans being, you know, increasing their value because mainlanders are coming and serving their needs. You know, let's promote that story, right? So we have this opportunity that I think is really amazing, combined with, you know, decentralized media, decentralized systems, to do exactly what you're saying. Get the positive story out there, tell the real story based on the data, and of course, you know, point out the flaws as well. That's how we're going to improve. You know where we're screwing up. And even as people come to the island, if they're not doing it right, point it out and say, hey, you know, this isn't how we're doing things, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned the same story on Twitter that I saw that Andreas Antonopoulos shared. I remember posting so fierely about it. Like, I posted maybe 6 or 7 tweets there, and Brock Pierce retweeted them. But I was not doing it to, like, protect Brock Pierce. I'm just, like, against, like, this venomous journalism that covers one very particular narrative, omitting everything that happens around. Just, like, as a journalist, I felt bad about it. So I feel like more people should write about it, and that's definitely become my mission, to, like, tell more positive stories about what happens, and truthful stories. I don't want to, like,
I've read some of those stories. They're fantastic. I like the narrative too. You're telling the story of, like, meeting with people on the ground. What are they doing? What projects are they involved in? I love that, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of those as well.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much for this interview. I think we covered so much ground. I think we covered, like, an amazing narrative, like couple of narratives actually. And I'm looking forward to connect with you more on the island. And yeah, you're literally welcome. Like, I know so many people. I can introduce you to a lot of people. Like, if you want to make change in Puerto Rico, let's do it. So
thank you so much. It was an honor. Thank you.